Wallace Gayasika. My name is Jerry Lawson. My Celtic name is Malagus. I'm from Bella Bella, BC, about 500 kilometers north of Vancouver. But I live and work in the unceded ancestral territory of the Hunkaminam-speaking Musqueam people. I manage something called the Oral History and Language Lab at the University of British Columbia Museum of Anthropology. I'm really pleased to be moderating this amazing panel and wanted to start off with just a quick note on digital equity. It's the notion that people should have the equal access to the ability to use digital technologies and resources to participate fully in society. And think about what society is and what society means. Generally, as Indigenous people, we get the tools to participate in an assimilated way into mainstream Western society. And when we look at digital equity and the need for affordable connectivity, the appropriate devices, affordable or appropriate digital literacy and applications, those should serve us within our Indigenous communities. And I'm really excited to hear from this group. I want to start by saying we know AI is transformational. We know AI is dangerous. We must engage in major emerging technologies, Indigenous people, or else we're going to be left behind or run over by it. So with that, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves and carry on with the discussion. So thank you. And we can start with Olivia.
Hello, everybody. My name is Olivia. I am Cree and Métis and a member of One Arrow First Nation in Saskatchewan. I was born in Alberta, raised in Vancouver, and I currently work as a research analyst with the First Nations Information Governance Centre on their National Data Champion team, advancing the First Nations data governance strategy, which is essentially building data centers across the country to be used as statistical centers so Indigenous people can hold and use their data. I previously worked in Indigenous cancer research, and I participated in the MILA program called Indigenous Pathfinders. That was Quebec's AI Institute. And as part of that program, I developed a project that aim to address the gaps that inhibit Indigenous people from adopting AI. So one being the connectivity piece, the second being the governance piece, and the third being the workforce pipeline. So.
Hi Latanaka, Kuyakanaka, Nayan Sutimarsh, Norman Valdez, Nayaha Walipuniu, Kusishra, Umanang Kampi, Kasishwa. Does anybody understand that language here? So that language I spoke is Aymara, and what I said was, hello, brothers and sisters. My name is Norman Valdez, and I'm happy to be here with you. Just to introduce, I am, that's my name, and I'm originally from Peru, but I've been in Canada for 25 years. My ancestry is Aymara, which is the people that live around Lake Titicaca in southern Peru. And I was also born in Cusco. If you heard of Machu Picchu, that's the city, but not literally on the ruin, but in the city that was there. I'm here, I think, just gonna say why I'm here, and then from there, my little bio is gonna come out. I'm here primarily because being focused very much for the last, basically since ChatGPT came out on November 30th, 2022, that this thing is completely different. And we need to treat it different, and we need to think differently about it. And like many, such as the godfather of AI, one of them, Geoffrey Hinton, who actually took a class in machine learning in 2010 at U of T, which is where I'm from, often talks about, when you listen to him, about the existential threat. And I know that goes into the gloomy downside and it depresses. But I think like many, we feel that there's concerns, there are very warranted concerns that this needs to be treated differently. And we need to be aware of, if you're talking about digital literacy, we need to not just do digital literacy to learn how to use the tools, but so that we can understand it, so that we can actually become participatory in its shaping. So beyond just, saying that, we exclude it and this and that, of course, it's always been. But because the AI is different, because it adds a new layer, because it forces us and because it touches every single aspect of our society, it is more than ever important to think about things about inclusivity. So from that lens, my work, I wear a few hats, but one of them is working as the technology director for CEREC, which is a national charitable organization that advances career development in Canada. From that lens, career development is going to be much needed on our society. Millions of jobs are going to be transformed, disappearing, and then existing. And so how can we actually think about the ways in which we can actually prepare, especially youth? Like, are you doing the things that will prepare you for what most likely be a very rapid transformation within just like a few years? We're already seeing disappearance of entry-level roles and youth unemployment being on very rampant. So because of those transformations, my second hat relates to working at the Community Foundation of Canada as an emerging technology fellow. And what we're building is some sort of coalition, institute, hub, whatever you want to call it, something that would actually tie in all aspects of social impact sector, because this is the time for not working in silos. This is the time for coming together, for all views being included, because right now AI is incomplete. It is excluding not just languages, it is excluding worldviews, it is excluding, and it's being shaped up by a few handful, which is usually banking, big tech, and government. And we, civic society, people that don't fall under those three structures are not being included. And so it's being shaped for them. And so we need to be thinking about literacy precisely so that we can actually go into changing the course of this ship, which is not going into the direction that at the end of the day is always just thinking on the short term, and we need to be thinking very, very long term. So finally, my last hat is my organization called Brain Trainer that I founded about a year ago. And we precisely focus on advancing and bringing and democratizing AI education centered around underrepresented and marginalized groups, which could include newcomers, Black communities, of course, Indigenous. And we look at it from the perspective that there's a huge opportunity by focusing on those communities that have been left out, because we need to get all perspectives. We need to get new perspectives. And we think we can find those perspectives by actually upskilling and optimizing and bringing those people forward into places that they've never been able to do. And we have that opportunity to do that with AI, as well as creating solutions, AI use cases that are centered in responsibility, ethics, and safety.
And Dan, can I get your self-intro?
Hello, everyone. So glad to be here virtually with you all this morning. My name is Dan Clouston. I'm joining today from traditional ancestral Tla'amin Nation territory on the West Coast. My family ancestry comes from Scotland and from England, and it's really an honor to be here with you all today and to be in conversation as well. So I'm affiliated with the First Nations Technology Council, FNTC. We are an Indigenous-led nonprofit mandated by First Nations leadership in British Columbia, and we work to advance digital literacy, improve internet connectivity, and provide guidance on data and digital technologies for all of the 204 First Nations across the province. And I've been with the FNTC since 2019 in roles as both an instructor and now manager of digital skills and career development, through which I'm focusing on developing and delivering digital skills training to post-secondary Indigenous learners. These are from introductory to more advanced specialized programs, very much within FNTC's digital skills mandate. And relevant to the discussion today, these days, I'm leading a project at FNTC to create 3 new artificial intelligence courses at beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels and as well to integrate AI skills into our existing curriculum. So really what I'm looking forward to sharing with you all is how we're approaching building out this programming and developing AI literacy.
Thank you. And Jeff.
Skeno Seguego, Jeff Dr. Nigioso, Gagahono, Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. So, hi. I'm Jeff. I am Cayuga from Six Nations. We're located just southwest of Toronto, about an hour by car. Originally, our home territories are upstate New York, but we've been dispossessed for a long time by the Americans after the American Revolution. Long story. And so I come from Haudenosaunee folks who went to Grand River. It's a bit about me and where I'm coming from. Professionally speaking, I work for a company called Animeki. We are an Indigenous tech company. We largely focus on web apps and building pretty much applications that work through your web browser. And so as such, they obviously kind of need the internet. But also not necessarily, we can also build offline solutions as well, because a lot of what we focus on is, the classic premise of, nothing about us without us. And so when we're building our software, we have to be very considerate and careful about who we're building it for, what their needs are, what they're seeking to achieve, because the last thing we want to do is inadvertently create another relationship of dependence. So my background is actually in sociology. So even though I work for a tech company, I'm always thinking about externalities. I'm always thinking about the history of technology, where technologies come from, what we call technologies, what we don't. And it's my job to largely question what we take for granted, especially as dominant narratives in tech. And so when folks come to us asking about something like so-called AI, because they heard about it on TV or on the news, the radio, or like can't go anywhere these days without hearing that particular term, folks often think, oh, I need this. And it's my job to sit there and look at them like, do you though? So that's where I'm coming from, I guess, in this particular discussion. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. As I've said, an amazing panel. At times I couldn't quite tell if we were in the presentation or still in the, they're so experienced and amazing at what we're about to talk about. So if Olivia, would you like to come to the podium and give your talk, or did you do it already? Okay, I think oh, okay.
I just like making this up as I go along to your presentation.
I just thought it was.
Okay, so we're clearly figuring this out as we go. So let's excellent. So I'm going to start off with a question, and how can communities assert and maintain sovereignty over their own data in the age of AI? And I think I'll start with Olivia, directed at that one.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm always thinking about the communities that aren't connected and are dealing with real world issues on the ground and may not even know about AI or care about it. And so I think that it's the responsibility of us who are pushing this forward to really think about those communities in every step of whatever process we're doing. That can look like Indigenous data impact assessments for when tools are being developed and deployed, as well as benefit sharing clauses or OCAP anchored contracts for when models are creating value. I think for communities also really focusing on building the local economy, and so fostering community-owned ISPs for those communities that aren't connected so that money and data can stay in the nation. as well as working for like pathways for people to work from home. So I think that Indigenous people in tech are a hot commodity and often are ripped away far from their home communities. So really creating opportunities for them to stay in nation and stay close to their families. And then as well I think digital tools are really beneficial when they're used properly. And so if we can help communities to cut out the middleman for a lot of admin processes, those funds can be redirected elsewhere. And lastly, allowing these communities to decide when to opt in. So to build on what you were saying, I don't think that, yes, AI is a big word right now, but a lot of communities might not necessarily need that right now. So not forcing them to enter an environment that they may not be ready for, but working to have all the supports available for them to really adopt it in a ethical way when they are ready. So.
Thank you so much. And I started with Olivia because the First Nations Indigenous Information Governance Center is a world leader in Indigenous data sovereignty. And things like OCAP have been used for well over a decade now, maybe 2 decades, by information professionals, by nations in standardizing the practices around how we keep our information safe. And with that, I'd like to open it up to the panel for the same question. And that is, how do communities assert and maintain sovereignty over their own data in the age of AI?
Yeah, so I find this a interesting question, especially now in the larger Canadian context, where this notion of digital sovereignty is suddenly like, now Canadians are all like, oh no, our sovereignty is being threatened. And I'm sure like I'm sitting here, like a lot of folks in this room, that's like, first time? Like, it's just like, and so where I'm coming from in that sense is like so-called AI, and I use that preface a lot because I think it's very important to be very clear at all times when, like, what the heck are we actually talking about? AI as a term or a moniker or whatever, like I've been in tech long enough to know that like there's always some fad. There's always some like thing that's just like always got to be the thing. And it's very funny how quickly the last silly things were like, do you remember like NFTs? Remember blockchain? Remember how like all that was going to change our lives and revolutionize everything? It's always the same narrative. It's always the same narrative. And AI as a term, as a concept, as a brand or whatever has been around a long time. And it cycles through certain kind of trends. And we're not really that different than where we've been before in terms of these hype cycles. The difference is that we're really allowing a lot of our data, of our intellectual property, the things we take for granted about the internet itself being taken advantage of and exploited. So I think that's a serious problem given the very nature of particularly large language model generative AI. Particularly that created by large tech companies who like are obviously the baddies. I mean, like, come on, like it's pretty obvious given what they care about, what they're up to. I mean, so do you really want to trust major corporations who are now like the largest and most powerful and have the biggest market cap, even more than oil companies now, are now technology companies? And do you really trust them to have your best interests at heart? Do you really trust that they are creating things that are for continue relations of capital for them are meant to really oh, what's the pros or cons? Or depends, totally depends. But I think when it comes to where we're at now, a lot has changed in terms of as we're putting things on the internet, it's this really nasty contradiction where the internet itself has been amazing in terms of distributing our knowledge, especially to members of our communities and our nations who have been dispossessed, disconnected, removed from our homes and our people, and have used the internet as a tool to learn things, to reach out, to quote unquote reconnect. And to do that, we've had to put a lot of information on the internet. We've had to leave it open because, like, that's how people can find us, our own people. But the problem is now we're at a point where it is now tech companies that basically take all this data, spit it out again back to probability engine. So do we really think that our knowledge, our wisdom, like the deeply embedded, like even spirituality of the way that we as Indigenous peoples have been around for a very long time can be truly replicated by a statistical probability machine that just extrudes like things that look convincing? Like, is that where we're at now? So I really worry, and I cautioned everyone at the last ICS a year ago that we're in this horrible contradictory space where if we contribute things on the open internet, and what I mean by that is if you put anything on a website that doesn't have a login wall, there's going to be a bot that's just going to scrape it, and who knows what's happening to that data. And then it gets replicated, it gets thrown up on a YouTube channel or on TikTok or whatever, and then the next generation of disconnected people see that as truth. They see that as reliable. They see that as an accurate manifestation of all of the depth and complexity of our cultures. They create their own content, and then that content gets ingested and spit out again. So it's like the era of salvage anthropology, but like 1,000 times worse. So with that in mind, I just caution everyone, like, again, going back to like, what are we actually talking about with AI? Because there's like that side of things, but there's a lot of like very useful things under the umbrella of AI that can be useful when it comes to transcription, when it comes to things like optical character recognition that allows us to go through a lot of records relatively quickly because there's so much information that we have to get back from archives, that we have to take back to the government, that we have to assess and organize and then get back to our own people. And things under the umbrella of AI are part of those technologies. So I don't want to just sit here and be like, oh, all AI is bad. Like, which AI? So I'll stop there.
Fantastic. And your description of putting things on the internet and public-facing data reminds me of when students started to study AI and tech bros would get so excited about finding public-facing data. They would discover. It was the brand new colonialism where everything that was on the internet was terra nullius and available for scraping and taking and using in any way people wanted. So it's a dangerous space, but it's so amazingly beautiful for especially people who live away from our communities to be able to learn our language by public-facing data. So I want to give Dan a chance to hop in. It can be really difficult online to assert in a panel. So.
Thanks, Jerry. And I guess to respond to the question and also listening to Jeff and Olivia's comments. So I'm coming very much from the perspective of creating programming and supporting literacy around AI through FNTC's work. And I guess to share about our overarching goal and philosophy guiding this work would be to present the landscape of AI in a balanced way, to address the aspects for optimism and also to address many concerns and provide Indigenous people and communities that we serve the opportunity to and explore, to engage or possibly not to engage by choice with AI technologies in a way that aligns with their unique needs and priorities. And very much the starting place for us in developing courses and really everything that we're doing as an organization is engagement with the people that we serve. And currently at FNTC, we have a handful of engagement-oriented research projects underway. In relation to AI, the most notable is our digital transformation project, and we're seeking to understand what are the barriers to AI adoption, what are the opportunities of AI from the perspective of individuals and communities. How could AI strengthen nation building, governance, service delivery, cultural preservation? So we have collected both quantitative data and qualitative data, over 100 survey responses, over a dozen interviews, and we're still in the process of analyzing this data, but the preliminary findings of it are very much informing the way that we're approaching course development and AI literacy. And in general, to speak to some of the preliminary findings, we see varying levels of existing AI uptake. I should mention that our survey respondents are individuals who work at band councils, governments, and ECDEV corporations. So we do see that there's healthy existing AI uptake, that primary barriers to AI adoption are foremost a lack of training, privacy and security concerns, limited understanding of the tech, ethical concerns. One of the key findings that stands out to me is 98% of our participants expressed some level of interest in taking AI training, and that 2/3 are very interested. So there's evidently the demand to learn more about AI, but it's very much the combination of optimism and caution, in a sense of AI being a potential tool for efficiency, knowledge management, cultural revitalization, but also very much those concerns about ethics, privacy, governance, cultural safety, bias. And I will also just mention that those research findings are not just a one-off, and it is something that we're hearing echoed in other research that we have underway, engagement-oriented research. So very much all of that is guiding the way that we're approaching developing AI programming, and yeah, really just allowing the voices of Indigenous people and communities to guide the work that we're doing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. Just want to say I'm a huge fan of the Technology Council and the work they do in digital literacy. And what Dan's talking about is really often when we're talking about digital literacy, we're talking about getting elders on iPads so that they can engage in language programs. And this is the other end of that bell curve where we're getting the nuance of how do you engage appropriately in AI within communities. So I love the breadth of work that the Technology Council does. So, Armin.
Yeah, I'm just going to say what I said earlier, that AI literacy has to be centered around ensuring that it produces more conscious and more civic participatory individuals as a result of knowing how to use AI, because AI is such a systemic changer. It is a maximizer of digital transformation in a way that we've never seen it before. the literacy around AI should not just be about, hey, look at the wonderful things that ChatGPT does. It can reason, it can upload, it can talk to you, it can blah, blah, blah. That's great. But we need to be given the right eye-opening understanding of the systemic way in which AI is actually changing our society. And so therefore, AI, or at least from the lens in which I and other collaborators look at it, is like a sword or a knife. You can know how to use that knife, and you can do wonderful things. You can do art, etc. You can also get hurt by it, and you can for sure contribute to harming the society with it. And so we need to make sure that we understand all three aspects, not just one, which is usually tends to go around, let me just show you how to use ChatGPT. It's wonderful. It can do optimizations. Yes, absolutely. The reason why I'm wearing 7 hats is actually because I do use AI and I optimize my workflows. I am proof of that. But we need to continue to move the needle on ensuring that AI doesn't accentuate or exacerbate the current crises that we're living in, which we have several. It's not neutral, right? It can actually be the changer. We can actually use AI and support all areas. Housing, we can solve housing crisis. We can solve education for sure. So many things we can solve with it. What we don't want to do is to think that we're actually solving these things by using it and then actually being contributors of its harm. How many people know, for example, that in one prompt, ChatGPT burns 4 times the fossil fuels that Grok, which is another model, does on a single prompt? So why is that? Because ChatGPT is a pioneer, right? It's the first things you heard when you heard this generative AI wave that we're living in. Some of their infrastructure is a little bit older, and because of that, it's not as efficient with energy. But Grok's infrastructure, which is xAI, Elon Musk's company, has had a newer infrastructure, so therefore it's more efficient with energy consumption. However, on that principle alone, you can't just go and say, I'll use Grok, because Grok is pretty much like DeepSeek of Elon Musk, in that is highly biased. So therefore, another aspect that I can tell you that will maybe help you see how current technology is not just incomplete, but being driven to be of most benefit by the few, is the way that AI actually gets tested. It gets tested using these things called benchmarks. And these benchmarks are tests that you put these models to see how good are they at certain areas. For example, coding and math and other kinds of tests that it puts through. 80 to 90% of those benchmarks are on coding and math. And who does coding and math benefit? Oh, it just so happened that it benefits banking and big tech, because it's not unintentional. So therefore, we need to think about AI as being a multiplier. What about of this community, this particular community within this group, offers opportunities to actually use AI in a responsible, safe, and ethical way, so that we can actually drive the opportunity. And to that, I would even go as put the term out there, which is not so much put out there, but the idea of AI sovereignty. We talk about data sovereignty, as it's been around, but AI sovereignty means that you find the ways in which you can actually take some place in this space of AI, where the models are largely, in the US under that jurisdiction, and in Canada we only have one model called forget the name right now for some reason. You know who I'm talking about? Okay. Anyways, there's only one model right now, Cohere. There you go. It's Cohere. And so AI sovereignty means we create our own AI, basically. We create our own models, we create our own data centers, we create our own ways in which this AI actually works at all levels of the tech stack. And so, so that's to answer the question of communities and
Jessica, absolutely.
Okay, so I want to be a jerk here, but I kind of have to correct the narrative. So first of all, with environmental impact of any kind of data center or any of these new models, it's not a matter of just because a model is newer, doesn't mean it's going to be inherently more environmentally friendly. It completely depends on the vast infrastructure of whatever these companies choose to create their data centers. And a data center basically just, for all intents and purposes, is a lot of computers. Each of these computers, as they compute things, so basically as they do math, they generate a ton of heat. And they got to cool down. How do they cool down? They cool down usually with water, sometimes air, but air conditioning is expensive. Water cooling is cheaper. Elon Musk, for example, wonderful person, totally the best ever. I'm not saying that you think that, just to be clear. But the point is it's been proven that like one of his massive data centers, I think near Houston, one, he just ignored environmental regulations completely. And two, he just set up a whole bunch of diesel generators to just blast out a ton of horrible emissions, which poisoned the local community because it was cheaper. It was more expedient. He had to, quote, win the race. So all of those narratives of like, oh, we like, whether it be fear of missing out or whether it be a race or whether it be like, like it's like classic like disaster capitalism where it's just like, creating this sense of urgency of like, oh, we have to do this. And yeah, some people need to be sacrificed. And we have to be very careful about data centers in particular because all data that lives on this quote unquote cloud, like this is a huge environmental footprint. So like as indigenous peoples, we should be very concerned that this, especially large language model generative AI, requires an ungodly amount of electricity, a lot of land, a lot of resources, minerals, all of these kinds of things. Every time you do a prompt, you're part of that. You're part of that very large supply chain and relationship of exploitation that these companies are hoping lasts forever. They want to create this digital dependency, and it'll be happening on our territories. So, and then further, yeah, the whole benchmark thing is a mess because it's like, they'll say like, oh yeah, it's as smart as a PhD or whatever, like it's really good at math or whatever. Because it tested itself on its own material. Like they rigged the benchmarks to basically like, it's completely arbitrary. It means nothing. Absolutely nothing. Even the notion of intelligence has a long history of racism. So how do we know these things work? And quite frankly, they don't. They're incredibly unreliable. Again, large language model, generative AI. And we can't assume it's just going to magically get better. How? If you understand how these things work, they can't get better. They're statistical averaging. That's all they're doing. They take basically whatever data is assigned into it, create a bunch of tokens, and create like what it creates a statistical like probability of what it thinks it's going to be the most accurate output. I shouldn't say think because it doesn't think. It's just math. And as indigenous peoples, like we're always going to be an outlier in larger societies. So like we can't do averages. We can't do that. Like it just is, it's not fit for purpose, so to speak, for a lot of these kinds of things. And then last, like Cohere, I have to call them out because like they're partners with Palantir. And like, again, when I started this whole thing about Canadians suddenly being all scared about their sovereignty, like, oh, boo-hoo. Meanwhile, they're partnering with the very people who are like the baddies, like Palantir is the baddie. I mean, come on, like it's obvious. And yet our media class just ignores all that because, oh, it's Canadian. We need our own AI because those baddies over there have their AI and China's got AI and America's got AI. Everyone, the baddies all got AI. Like, so what if, like, who cares? If it's not actually serving us as people, like, why do we care? Why do we fall for these narratives every time? So, sorry, I just had to.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, just to be clear, I didn't actually mean to say that newer technologies translate to better for the environment, just for that particular case. And yeah, I think Grok is out of all the evil, the most evil, by the way. So I avoid at all costs and as much as possible, I talk about it. But on that particular case about the prompting, yeah, it does just for that case. But there are other practices around the world that are interesting. Like in China, they're building data centers under the ocean. And that makes sense because it's natural cooling, right? You don't need to use energy for that. So like, it's why it's important to, have a general awareness and then just seeing how we can tap into, ideas that we can rely on.
I love this panel so much. So I'm I'm going to go back to Jeff for this one because this is a natural segue into the rules. Who should be responsible for setting the rules around AI? Government, technology companies, communities, or a mix, or something else?
I have no idea. Honestly, I mean, like governments, who's government? Like I'm Haudenosaunee, we have our traditional council, we have the Six Nations Band Council, like who's government? And even we say, oh, as Indigenous peoples, oh, we should govern. Like who? Like even within our own communities, we don't necessarily have our own. We don't all necessarily agree on who our own government is. And then again, Haudenosaunee, I'm not Canadian, so I don't care what Canada does. Like that's a them problem, right? Like, and so for them to just like assume they can regulate everything on our behalf, like, oh, like what? No. So, and technology doesn't care about borders, like especially internet-based technologies. Like, so this notion again of like digital sovereignty, like, and then tech companies like they've captured government. Like, look at what Carney's doing. He's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna tax like big tech. Now we're not. Why? Like he literally just like took Canadians' money and threw it out the window because like America said boo. And he's like, oh, I mean, quite frankly, like, well, that's a discussion for tomorrow. But yeah, he serves the interests of capital, and capital says, yeah, we don't want to lose money. And Carney's like, okay, cool. So yeah, regulating this kind of stuff, I don't have an answer for that. Like, do you have an answer, please? Like,
See, Norman, do you have an answer for that?
Sorry, set me up again.
Who should be responsible for setting the rules?
Us. And that's basically because it's not right now. And that is that when I say us, I mean civic society. Let me frame it from this perspective, right? The three main groups that are leading AI right now have a conflict of interest. Governments have a conflict of interest because they usually have agendas, and some of these agendas lead to wars and things like that. Companies have an agenda of making more money and being profitable and beating each other because there's AI race happening within the global space, within countries, like US versus China, ChatGPT versus DeepSeek. But there's also going on between companies. They're trying to outdo each other. And soon we will have, in a couple of years, maybe about a year, we'll have the first $1 trillion company, which is higher than GDPs, right? So what happens with that concentration of power? They tend to, as I was saying, with the benchmarks and with these things, they are creating an AI that is going to be profitable, that advances their agendas, and that will not, at the end of the day, be something that is going to be of most useful to us. And so therefore, civic society, many of which are here, social impact sector, needs to come into the picture and be more participatory and actually have a say at the tables that make decisions about how the current direction of AI it's going. And so yeah.
And I don't know if Dan has any answers, or we can just go to the next question that's kind of aimed at Dan. Yeah, absolutely. Just one more second.
I forgot to say there are existing things, especially for indigenous communities. There's something called abundant intelligences. If you will look at it, abundant intelligences is a research program. It's an indigenous-led initiative that focuses on conceptualizing, designing, and developing AI based on indigenous knowledge systems. And so it's a collaborative that has 48 co-investigators, 13 universities, 8 community-based organizations across Canada, the US, and New Zealand. So this is the kind of collaboration that we actually need to have and strengthen so that we can go down the path of actually being at the forefront of, AI.
Thanks. The last question was, beyond infrastructure, what skills or training are most critical so communities can benefit from AI, not just consume it? And as Dan and Olivia.
Sounds good. I will touch on the last question around policy and hopefully kind of lead into the the question there, Jerry. I guess to say in terms of who would be setting policy and taking the lead, that is doing is very much investing in Indigenous people and empowering people and individuals, communities to help shape the future of these technologies. And very like leading into providing training, addressing the education gap, and sort of seeing this wave of the technology that there's an expressed interest to ride the wave or to have an understanding of it, and presenting skills training that covers the different aspects of AI, from the opportunities to the concerns. To go back to our engagement and sort of the uses of AI, the applications, I can speak to what we're hearing from the research that we're doing, and hearing the interest in using AI for tasks like writing emails, reports, presentations, analyzing data, HR, inventory management, customer service. So the potential for AI to reduce heavy workloads and assist with administrative operational tasks. I guess those are some like what we've heard in terms of how Indigenous people are looking to use AI. And if I can kind of speak a bit to how FNTC is approaching or looking to approach creating our programming and digital literacy. There's a recognition that within the AI landscape, there's no shortage of training options that cover technical content. Topics like prompt engineering, neural networks, natural language processing. Many of the technical topics are already being addressed, in some cases by world experts and institutions who are updating their curriculum as this technology continues to grow and evolve. So an example of one of these training providers is Deep Learning AI, founded by Andrew Ng, and they offer a variety of courses and specializations. There's also tech giants like the Google and Microsoft are playing in this space, and they're making investments in AI training and upskilling. And at First Nations Technology Council, we're a relatively small nonprofit. We have a limited capacity for curriculum development, and we have to really be intentional with how and where we're directing our time and our energy. And if we were to develop AI courses completely from scratch, we would spend a lot of resources trying to recreate what others have done in terms of guiding learners through technical content, and very much wanting to address those pieces informed by the research and the interests that individuals and communities have. So instead, our current approach, more of a hybrid kind of way to develop courses, is to use industry recognized third-party certifications. Currently, we're exploring partnership with Coursera, who's one of the large educational content providers, and much of the deep learning catalog is available through that platform. in addition to courses from Google and Microsoft. And I will say it is completely with eyes open that we engage with that content in understanding that the tech giants are creating AI training in their own best interest. It's not a philanthropic. They're not just doing it out of goodwill. It's very much serving their bottom line. But I guess seeing it in a way of there is benefit to our learners. There's a recognition that comes with these certifications for some individuals who might be looking to continue and follow pathways into the technology sector. And as well, the benefit very much being that we get access to this content, not in a way that it's to endorse or promote a specific provider. And I think that in the way that we present content, being explicit and critical of some of the creators. That was a bit of an aside, but I guess to come back to our approach, which is to have this backbone of technical content, and alongside this and woven into it is in-house custom AI related material that is culturally grounded, that is reflective of Indigenous worldviews, histories, lived realities. And that's where we're putting our time and our energy. And so this includes presenting case studies, presenting key considerations, ethical concerns, reflection prompts, how-to guides, data sets, and generating this indigenized AI-related content that can situate technical contexts, technical concepts into context, and really with that goal coming back to our overarching philosophy of presenting the landscape of AI as it currently stands. I guess to say the good and the bad, and hopefully making courses that are relevant, that resonate, that are balanced. And I could go on and on in terms of the material that we're generating. I will just quickly note that some of it does include weaving in some legends into our coursework. So with guidance from an Indigenous curriculum specialist, we're working to take some Haida legends and weave that into our course content. In our introductory material, for instance, we're looking to orient learners to AI technologies by highlighting connections to the Raven and the Clamshell Haida legend. And also want to note, as we're doing this work led by this curriculum specialist, very much mindful of ensuring ethical representation of content, obtaining the necessary permissions, and providing appropriate attribution, and respecting boundaries around cultural and sacred knowledge. But I guess it's all to kind of say that the programming that we're trying to create will provide pathways for learners to engage and leverage AI in alignment with their own needs and their own priorities, to explore how to engage with the technology safely and responsibly, and to empower Indigenous people to be part of shaping the future of AI.
Well, I think that's one of the things that challenges us is we see with the AI, et cetera. And I think here, like what you point out really quick is, it's the curriculum development and some of the stuff we're looking at. And I think this is what everyone keeps in mind here as to what's happening. And kind of interesting. Yeah, we have Olivia. We want to hear from FNIGC, your data. We got to hear this one here.
I know everyone's hungry and we're in lunch, so I'll just make this quick. But I did a research project on all of the AI use in North America by Indigenous people. And one of the main findings was, there's millions of dollars being poured into digital education right now for Indigenous people. But what communities are finding is that there's no follow-up, so no hands-on experience for people to really harness these skills. So, children are ripped away for coding camps for a week and then brought home to their families who don't know have the resources or the terminology to really support this. So I think that speaking to what Dan was mentioning is taking a bunch of programs that are already working and making clear pathways to entry-level roles. So this could be, like I said, kid doing some coding camps, and then maybe that can feed into some of the programs that are offered by FNITC, and then feed into some hands-on programs like the Indigenous connectivity workshops or the tribal broadband bootcamp that's offered down south. And so having a clear pathway for these people to go into entry-level roles that they can bring back to their communities, as well as being mindful about making sure that these are jobs that won't be taken over by AI in the future, and jobs that will also benefit communities in this new digital world. So data stewardship, AI operations, data privacy, and multi-generational learning. So like I said, kids can come home and have conversations with their parents and elders about what's going on, and everybody can have information to make informed decisions. And lastly, digital literacy for leadership. So for chiefs and councils, just giving them the tools to be able to participate in these conversations, because going back to who should make the rules, I agree with you. I don't know, but what I do know is that communities should be involved at these tables. So giving them the terminology to really participate and identify risks for their communities. So short and sweet.
Wallace Gaska, thank you so much to the panel. This was an amazing discussion, and I was a little bit afraid because I'm such a skeptic and such a person who really looks at the dangers of AI around Indigenous data and sovereignty, and I was a little bit afraid that I would be the one left out of this panel in the risks with a bunch of gung-ho AI people. But it is something that is coming, and it's something that we can't avoid, but it is something that we have to educate ourselves about and train. And I thank Dan for reminding us that 204 communities in British Columbia have to punch above their weight in very mainstream things like HR and payroll, and AI can help a very small staff to do things that take a long time. And yes, it's a so.
Sorry. I back on this assumption that this technology is just.
Yeah, we're going to push back at lunchtime on the assumption. So again, if we can show some appreciation to the panel, and please, if you do want more discussion, you can approach at lunchtime, and we're happy to talk.
Yeah, so I think thanks for all the panel members and Jerry, and we know about artificial intelligence or Anishinaabe intelligence. We had that way before this stuff that happened, etc. There's one thing, Felici, can you put it up just before we go? There's some questions that are put out, but we're going to have. But while this is a book, you should maybe take a look at. One of the things is read it backwards. Don't read it forwards. Read it backwards. One of the things is we already gave information for the first generation of AI. Why? Because we used it. We use Google. We use all of those, and we populated AI without us even knowing it. And we gave up our privacy because AI finds out like what we've done with it by where we surfed, what we did, etc. Now it's on the 4th or 5th generation. Now it's starting to generate some of that stuff, and this is what we're not told. So this is the interesting part about AI. There's that thing. Maybe before we leave, how many here use ChatGPT? All the time. Okay, how many don't use it? How many are going to use it? Okay, and how many want to go to lunch? Let's go to lunch. Because with AI, it's kind of new for everyone. And I think one of the things about AI is I asked those of you that use it, How good is AI? Well, it's only as good as the question that you ask it, and that you understand the parameters. And this is the challenge with it. If you ask it anything, it's going to give you an answer like a politician, which is no answer at all. Just kidding. But if you answer specifically, it'll give you a little more, give you a specific some of the details that you're looking for, provided that you know what information is there. And one of the things about it now is like I mentioned earlier, you're like the fourth and fifth generation of AI. AI is already sorted this stuff out. And for some of us out there, when you use any of these search engines or other stuff, we've already given it information, we've populated it. And the interesting thing about that is when you read the book that was just put up earlier, that was up there, if you read it backwards, what we come to realize now is that we've given it all that information, we've populated that. And when AI goes back now, it goes back, it knows exactly where you searched and what you did, so it's already profiled you. That's the thing. It already profiled you. You like the Trivago and all these things. You like to look at Lamborghinis. You like to look at bologna sandwiches. And stuff like this. It's figured you out. So all of a sudden you get these things that are inundated. You says I like bologna, but I'm getting these bologna advertisements and stuff. Well, somewhere in there, this is search engine, but this is also AI, and these are the ones that control AI, and this is one of the things that's happening. And it profiles us. And what about our privacy? I think by just virtue of utilizing, we've already given that up. So I think these are the things that come about, and these are the challenges with AI, and these are things that everybody's now is just grappling with. But it was an open source thing, and it's gone out there. And I think what people are looking at is some have taken it real gladly. We've accepted it, and others have so-so, and others have said a cautionary tale. It depends what you use it for, what you need it. Some of it, if you know how to use it, it'll save you the time. But it's anything. It's like I remember when everybody started off the cell phone. Oh, it was a great thing, but there's no safeguards. There was no safeguards. We were driving with everything. We're texting while we're driving and all this stuff, and then rules and regulations had to be put in effect. Too many accidents and stuff like that. And I think this is one of the things with AI. I think, for example, a lot of archives, for example, like museums. I'll give you an example. Museums have an inventory of artifacts within their vaults. And one of the things with that archive, they don't even know what they have. Very few museums know what they have in their archives. But with AI, depending on the question you ask, it could sort that. But you have to know specifically how to ask that. And this is where the crux of the challenge with AI. But it'll search for what you don't know what you have, but it'll give you, that's the first generation. So it's how you use it. One of the things here is, how many here have no Siri? Okay, how many use Siri? Yeah, okay. One of the things I found with Siri, but this is going to change. Sometimes I'm traveling and my wife's driving and we ask, we don't have time to look. So, Siri, how do you get there? Or what is this? And it gives you. I found this out. I asked Siri. I ask it in Algonquin, the original language. Or, when you dictate to it, you dictate it in original language. Siri doesn't know how to deal with it yet. But it's coming where it's going to use AI. Siri's going to go to AI and then it's going to interpret and it's going to translate. Go ahead, try some of the languages on Siri. Siri is just a standalone. It does, it repeats, but something similar. But that's my fun. I get a laugh. I ask Siri, on the shape deck, it goes like that. It comes back and it doesn't know what it's saying, or it doesn't comprehend. And I'm asking it, how is it going? And I get this funny response from it. So I get a laugh, and I show the kids, some of the little kids. I says, ask it the Anishinaabe language or something, and they just laugh. But this is where AI is going to come in, and it is there. And we were told this by, right now, I'll give you an example. We had our elder here, and she mentioned she doesn't have language. We know the history. But one of the things that was a cautionary note that was provided by the elders to the youth, because now the reclamation of language, one of the things that happened is the elders told the young ones, you're really glad you got your language and you want to share it, and you're putting it on the net and you're saying these words, but the words are not conjugated properly, etc. But you're putting it out there and you're helping, you think you're helping. The cautionary note was this: it says, be careful what you put, because how it comes back. And sure enough, this is what's happening with AI. Everyone that puts stuff out there, even if it's not proper, it's being sorted back by AI. And it doesn't know which dialect of, say, like, for example, the Anishinaabe language. For myself, there's Ojibwe, there's all of those, Potawatomi, Menominee, same language dialect around the Great Lakes. But there is a difference. The word they use in the ethnography is dialect. So there's a word in the Anishinaabe called nabagoyege. It's like it sews it together. So this is what AI does. It goes and sews it together, pulls it all together, and it pulls this. But I don't know how good the pronunciation is, or if it differentiates between the difference in dialects and the differences in sayings, etc. So those are the things with AI, and those are the challenges. And thinking about that, what was said, it's true. And this was just like 3-4 years ago, and how fast it's done and how fast it's changed. So there's a cautionary note, is like, for everyone that uses it, it's how you use it and what you tell it, what specifically, etc. And how does it go into your systems? That's the other side of cybersecurity, is ChatGTP goes around looking. I could go to every table and find out without knowing. And this is one of the things that goes into the systems. So what are those safeguards in cybersecurity as well? And how do you safeguard that? And this is some of the things for at the community level. This is what the general public is coming to understand in hindsight, but this is like the 4th generation. It's like Library and Archives Canada knows very little what's in its library and archives in terms of pictures. It would take people years just to look at it, but AI goes in and looks at it, and it brings it up. But there's the other aspect. It could be traumatizing, triggering pictures. So you have to tell it, if you're looking non-trigger, what is the trigger, etc. What is the depiction? But if you order, it'll just pull everything and bring everything up. And this was discussed in some of the various departments in terms of what they have in museums. So they're not too sure what's there. So each and every one of you have personal experience in AI, and also your children, your grandchildren. A lot of times you don't peek over, and this is what teachers are grappling with now for AI training, and what was discussed here and at the community level. So those are the things I think, as adults and as parents, I think maybe peek over and talk to the teachers, like how are they going to teach this AI? Right now, it seems like the new generation of students. You remember, every one of you that has gone to post-secondary, you had to write an essay. Essay was the big thing, writing. Well, with ChatGTP and stuff and everything, that's taken out of, so now professors and stuff have to look at it like, okay, there's an AI checklist. If these things show up, it's there. So is the art of essay writing gone? Or how do you address that? Well, it's going to be like a verbal interview for an essay instead of a written one, because ChatGPT wrote it or gave the parameters, and you're seeing things that are listed. So, but if is that exactly what the student knows, or how do you know? Well, the only way is the personal interview or discussion with them. And I think this is one of the things we're dealing with now with for here as well. How do we do it in our systems, and how do we safeguard that? So just food for thought, and you're looking at the questions, about the AI, and those are some of our realities we're dealing with.